All right, hello everybody on YouTube to another Tim Cain reaction. This one is idea battles. I imagine this has to do with the conflicting ideas that inevitably occur on any team. Often why too you see a lot of solo developers being solo is because they don't have to confront other individuals about the ideas of their game. And you know what? More power to you if that's the way that you want to make games, right? But when you work in a team and you work professionally, if you are in any sort of role, any sort of lead role, or especially if you're on the design team, it doesn't matter what role you're on the design team, inevitably you are going to have to battle ideas in the ring of debate. And I'll tell you what, I've worked with some passive designers before that if you have any sort of battle with them, if you are even slightly defensive or have a bit of extra power over them, they will just crumble and immediately their ideas will not be as important. And that's kind of sad because a lot of times their ideas might be good, right? Being passive or assertive doesn't determine your worth or value of your idea. It just determines your ability to defend it and to openly voice why you think that it's better than other ideas. So there's a lot of personality training that I think should go into being a good designer. Of course, you don't want to be overpowering. You don't want to overpower people if their ideas are better, but you do need to stand up for what you believe in and what you think will make the game better. And sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes you're standing up for ideas that you think will be better, and then it turns out that that idea was bad. I've been there. I think every designer's been there. It's an inevitability.
Hi everyone, it's me,
Hey,
Tim.
Tim.
Today I want to talk about idea
Yeah.
battles. This comes from a question asked by Triplicata, who asked, "Hey Tim, bit of a long-winded question I've had for a while now. In previous videos, you've talked about sitting in a room for a long time having arguments, in quotes, about creative decisions. However, they're not really fights where people are upset, but rather passionate debates
Yes.
where people go to bat for their ideas. I love those types of discussions and I like to call them idea battles. My question is, do you have any favorite idea battles or ones that stand out to you? Times where you enjoyed the conversation, times where you thought you were right, but it turned out the other idea was better, or maybe times where the discussion led to a new idea that was better than the ones originally argued."
That's a great question. I mean, that is long-winded, but I think that it accurately nails the idea where ideally you do want to be in a room with other people and passionately conversing about the ideas that you're wanting to put in the game. But sadly, there are some times where you have toxic individuals, toxic team setups where it is a fight. It's almost a fight for authority and a fight for hierarchy, where, like I said, it really has to do with toxic individuals. But if somebody feels that they themselves are threatened or their position is threatened because an idea is better than theirs, they might openly defend, or it's simply not defend is the word, but push their idea as being the one that is going to be going forward because they are the one with the authority and the hierarchy. That creates a lot of resentment, especially if the general consensus in the team is that idea A is better than idea B, that idea B was the one that the individual with a lot of power and control had. It's just a really tough situation. It's why culture, I think, matters so damn much to every team that you want to make in game dev and similar uh, facets of life, where you need people who, if their idea gets shot down and they think they're right, they're willing to go with it as part of the team. And if somebody's idea turns out to be bad, when they pushed for it, they should have the responsibility and the amount of humbleness. What's the word I'm looking for? They should have the lack of ego in order to admit, you know what, you're right, your idea was better, mine was wrong, and then determine if it can be fixed within a reasonable amount of time, or if it's something that we have to save for the sequel, right? Which is and also a common reality too, where there are a lot of good ideas when you get into a room, especially with people who don't know too much about production or scheduling time, and you sometimes have to say, look, your idea is great if we had the time and the money for it, but we don't. So let's save your idea for the sequel. And it doesn't always mean that your idea is going to make it in the sequel, but we can save that conversation for when the sequel comes, and if we still think that that idea is valid and going to be better than what we have in the game right now. It just sucks, right? It sucks knowing that you had a great idea and it got shot down for no other reason other than there is no money for it. and you have to wait at least like 3-4 years for your idea to come back up to the surface if people even remember that idea at that time. So idea battles kind of suck, but they're also just a necessary evil, and you need to have a team that is willing to actually jump into that ring in good faith. And like the individual asked, it's a passionate debate because everybody wants the best for the game, not an actual fight.
Yes, that's a good question, Triplicata. I want to dive into it. But before I do, I want to take this opportunity to explain that this is the first video I filmed under the new membership rules. Since Triplicata is a master member, which subsumes Super Mutant, which gives
Super
video
Mutant
priority to the question, Triplicata asked this on Wednesday. I'm filming this Thursday. Now it'll get processed and ready to go up in a few hours, but the Friday video has already unlocked to the other master level viewers. So I will displace the next video in the queue, which is Mondays. But since that unlocks 2 days early for the masters, that will unlock on Saturday.
This is so confusing.
The video I'm filming now on Thursday will actually appear on Saturday. See, that's not confusing at all, right?
Yeah, right.
And this is why I do a lot of programming and not a lot of marketing and sales.
Fair enough.
Because yes, I invented those tiers, but that's the way it works. So they asked a question yesterday. I bumped it, filmed it, put it in the queue. The next one in the queue happens to be Monday, but Monday unlocks on Saturday.
But yeah, guys, go subscribe to Tim Cain.
So that's how it works.
Go subscribe.
Anyway,
He's great.
Idea battles. I wouldn't have called it this for a long time. And this is an example of once you have a long time in the business, you start to get this perspective of how things worked. In Fallout, the team, I've said, we didn't realize it at the time how cool it was, but we were just all on the same page, and we would talk about things all the time. I have mentioned
That's
how
rare.
Fallout originally started out with just my engine, an isometric engine, and so we had meetings in the evening because no one worked for me, so it'd have to be in the evening after hours, where we just throw around ideas. And for a while, it looked like the game we were going to make was going to be the time-traveling dinosaur game. And that's not what ended up, obviously, but those were really fun meetings because everybody came with ideas. We knew that there wasn't going to be anything decided right away because we wanted to have several of those meetings. Mm-hmm. So people just threw stuff out and we chewed on it. And it was really nice because, I didn't realize at the time, but people were being really cool about talking about ideas.
It's really rare too. I mean, especially that you can get people of the right culture and mindset into the same room, and that's already pretty damn difficult. What is even more difficult is getting those people of the right culture and mindset who also all agree on making the same game and think that that game is cool, especially when you don't have the idea yet. Because, I have friends I can, make games with, but we all have very different views on what kind of games we really enjoy making. So if we want to make a game together, we need to find consensus on that. And the more people you have, the more variation you might have. So, I mean, from what it sounds like and everything I've heard about Fallout 1, it just seems like Tim had the perfect concoction, the perfect recipe for that team and making that game. And that is just so rare, especially nowadays where it's common that on larger teams, you have people that don't even give a shit about the game. They're just there for the money, right? It's their job, or their career. It's not their passion. It's not their calling. As we had in another Tim Cain video where he, compared the three. And they might just not provide any ideas. You might have juniors who are afraid of talking. You might have people who are just naturally passive and will sit there and listen. I mean, and that's okay, I suppose. But again, it is just rare that you have that well-oiled machine of communication, especially nowadays where it's all being done primarily like remotely or online rather than in person. I think you lose some of that personal touch to it. Oh man, I wish I could have been taking part in that. I wish I was alive at the time that, reasonably old enough when Fallout 1 was being made.
And I'll talk about that in a bit, about how that can go off the rails. The one...
It could get chaotic.
Idea battle that I remember most clearly from Fallout, though, is when we'd already had an ending. I think I mentioned where you come back, you've gotten the water chip, gotten rid of the mutant army and the master, and you come back, there's a party, game ends. That's when Leonard Barsky came in and went, I have another idea. And that was his idea of you get kicked out of the vault, which I will admit, my first reaction was, what? No, we can't do that. Leonard really strongly argued this idea. And as you know, if you've played Fallout, that's the one we shipped with. I think that was the first time I literally had a meeting where someone passionately wanted something and had to explain it. Because my first reaction was, what? No. So I lost that argument, and I'm glad I did. Which moves us to Troika.
I mean, and that whole idea is so important, right? Because you can have that argument in real time, right? And I think I've been there. I've been there where I've listened to people's ideas, and in the moment I've said, dude, I don't think this is the right direction. I don't really like this idea. But then it just sticks in my mind, and I think about it, and I mull it over, and eventually it'll crumble down and be like, no, actually, I think this is better because it'll do this. It'll allow us to do this, this, and this. And then I'll come, to work the next day and be like, you know what? Your idea, let's do it. I love it. And sometimes it throws people for a loop because they're like, wait, didn't you just yesterday in work, you were saying that this is absolutely not the way we should do things? I'm like, yeah, but I thought about it. It's stuck with me. So yeah, it's just like if you're in a direction position, or especially in a design direction position, you can sometimes get really entrenched in this believed pathway. And because somebody's idea at the lower on the rung, or the more foundational the idea that they're changing, it can change that direction. So you've kind of thought about direction A so long that it's like, okay, this is pretty good. I like this. This is going to lead here, here, and here. But direction B throws that out of whack, and now you're like, okay, well, I don't hate the idea, but now I don't know where we're going. And so we need to kind of reconfigure that. I need to rethink about it. But then once you hit it and you're like, okay, then we can tie this back in and go here. But now this foundational idea is much better. And then you can come back and you can be like, okay, yeah, let's move forward with that. I don't think that made sense. I think I didn't explain that very well. But yeah, it's just like in the moment, you might lose an idea battle, or you might completely just say, you know what, I don't know, I got to think about it more. Then you gotta ruminate on it. So if you're ever in a position with a designer and they just tell you that they don't think the idea is good, it doesn't mean that you've lost. If you set really good seeds and really good motions in place into the designer's brain, hopefully they'll see the light of day at the end of it, right? So it's never, even if the idea is outlandish, it might spark something else. Or if you think, okay, well, I don't know how we can implement it, but here's an idea that I was thinking of. And it's crazy, but maybe the designer will think about it, and you'll think about it after work too. Like, okay, hold on. Similar vein, much more doable idea, but this. So the best thing you can do is not to hold good ideas back from designers, even if you think that they aren't perfect. Voice them, let the designer state their opinions, you state yours, ruminate on it, and then come back and say, okay, are we still in agreement? Sure. Do we have other ideas? Let's move in this direction too then. Petition have BDB have no pants. Is that what you want, Drymux?
Arcanum was similar to Fallout, where at the very beginning we all very much had similar ideas. That doesn't mean we didn't have some idea battles. There's a whole video I made about what I consider to be the Arcanum 1-point fiasco, which is Arcanum originally, for most of its development, was done in a way that higher level skills at higher levels and spells and attributes cost more the higher up they got. This made sense to me. We gave out multiple points per level, but some of the really high level stuff, like the 5th level spells and all that, they cost more than the number of points you could get in one level. So you had to save up for them. I liked this. I think there's something strong about a game that makes you savor and anticipate and save up your points. Save up.
Well, yeah, especially if it's something that's powerful, right? I agree. I mean, I could see how well that would be very good. And keep in mind too that what he's saying is not, even if it's a bad idea or there was something better for Arcanum, that doesn't mean that it's a bad idea in general, right? So there, like we mentioned here, there's no bad game design. There's just game design that doesn't work for the game you're making, and that is, it could very much be the true for any game.
Up your pennies to get this thing.
Mm-hmm.
The team didn't like it. Every other person on the team wanted the 1 point system, which is what we shipped with. And there's a whole video. A lot of you like that system. I still think it has problems. It's hard to balance a system when a level 5 spell costs exactly the same amount as a level 1. And the reason that's hard to balance is, why wouldn't you just buy? I mean, once you jump into a spell college, you're just going to buy your way up to the top, because those 5th level spells are awesome. It made generalists not so interesting, which is something I thought of later for Outer Worlds. But I lost that battle. I'm still not convinced it was the right thing to do, but a lot of you like the 1 point system. So that's a perfect example of a idea battle where I may be in the wrong side of that. There was also,
by the way, that happens very, very frequently. The reverse is also true, where you think that, yes, players want this. Players really, really want this. This will be very good. This is exactly what the market is looking for. This is comparable to other competition. And then you put that system in the game, and players hate it. And then you have to go back to the drawing board, like, oh shit. Well, I thought that would work. It is what it is. So there's both situations. It's just like you said, it's a balancing act, and it's kind of that compromise that you need to make when you are a game developer, where sometimes the players really like something that you hate as a game designer or a game developer, and vice versa. And you do have the authority to just force your ideas into the game, but that does come with the risk that you might be alienating a majority, and now that could dramatically increase or dramatically impact sales and or reviews, and that's very dangerous to do.
Also, Arcanum was the first time I learned that we don't always have meetings like this. And I've talked about this. There's a video about tech schematics where I wasn't invited to that meeting, and I had nothing to do with the design of that, which I was told later, and not by the person who made it, that my passion in having these meetings can be off-putting, in the sense that people think they're not being heard. Or worse, they like that I'm really passionate about my idea, but they don't express their ideas as passionately. So they're worried I'm going to lose the battle just because Tim is making a much more exciting sounding argument. I think
that happens to me too. I'm very very passionate about everything regarding game development and gaming. I could absolutely see how some people probably who have worked with me find that off-putting to have idea battles with me, which I like to have. I like to have that because I love to go into that space and see whose idea is best. But not everybody's like that. Not everybody is like us as individuals. And it's likely that there might be some people who are afraid of talking with me about those ideas simply because I do argue from a very passionate stance. That's something I have to consider. I have to find ways to make it easier to talk to me about ideas.
I think he's right. I think my design is better, but how do I win against somebody who puts their arguments so animatedly?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first time I learned that, people can really be anti-passion in this industry.
True.
And they might be right, but the same way that people these days ask for an accommodation for how they act, I wish I had said the same thing. This is just how I am. If you want to make games with me, this is how I am.
I mean, he's right. I think that's absolutely true. It's like if everybody communicates in a different way,
really,
like that, then okay. I don't think I should lower my passion. And this is something that I've talked with previous employers, where I think one of the reasons that they often don't, it's like they have this love-hate relationship for me if they are in positions of management, because they like my passion. They like that I'm trying to make their products better. But at the same time, they'll make decisions for the company that me being passionate and quite principled, I will just openly disagree with. And I will openly call out bullshit I remember getting in trouble. Ooh, he did not. Okay, yeah, previous CEO. This is a bit of a tangent, but previous CEO did not like me calling him out in front of the entire team for something that was just a blatant lie. I still don't think I was wrong for doing it, but I can see how, from a management perspective, he didn't like that. He was trying to save face, trying to not prevent morale from getting lower in the company, and his choice to do that was to just straight up lie. So, the passion can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. I think he's passionate about keeping the business alive, and I was passionate about not lying to employees, which I don't know if there's a clear winner here. I mean, you could make arguments for either, but it just that disagreement in the way that people will approach situations, passion versus job, passion versus career, can really, yeah, I can see how I and probably Tim would, if we ever got in a room like, hey, let's have a battle, let's have an idea battle, and we're just, passionately like, no, Tim, I think my way is better. This is why it'll do this and this for the players. Game A and B did it this way and they were successful, and I think that we could probably emulate that success. And Tim's like, well, no, because game C and D did it the same way and these were unsuccessful and this is why. I would love to have that kind of conversation, but yeah, I bet it's pretty off-putting to jump into that, or to even just, raise your hand and say, "Hey, can I voice an opinion?" Being on the other end of somebody who's so passionate and animated with their arguing, or debating, let's just say, let's use that word instead, probably is quite stressful, and not what most people are. I wouldn't say most people, but what many people don't want to engage in when they come to work, especially if they fear that that disagreement might lead to a long-winded debate, right? Which we also have on this channel. People remember the grass incident. Yeah, I mean, hey, if you want to have a passionate debate with me about my grass in my game, I will have a passionate debate about the grass in my game.
The same thing. This is just how I am. If you want to make games with me, this is how I am. I get really excited about things. When I'm excited about something you design, you're going to love it. When I'm excited about something I've designed and you want something else, you're going to hate it. That's how it goes with me.
I'm the exact same way.
Now, the other two Troika games, though, Temple of Elemental Evil was made so quickly that I don't think we had any major design meetings for things. We just had to design and go. In fact, it was a programmer and then another artist who worked on the entire turn-based UI. That's really awesome in Temple. I didn't have anything to do with it. The way you spent your move and then action components of your turn. There was no argument over that. They showed it to me. I'm like, this is great. Put it in. We just did not have time.
Yeah, I've been in that situation too, where it's just like, this is not a battle of ideas anymore. This is a battle of attrition, where either we implement something or we implement nothing. So whatever is first to be made, go for it. Because we don't have any room to play around with. You're the same. That's why I chose to work my project mostly alone. Yeah, and I think that's really, I think that leads a lot of people to work on either their own like mods or their own games, is because they don't have to capitulate. They don't have to bow down to anyone else, or hand off the authority. And I will say that I was the same way getting into the industry. I conflated passion. I let passion drive my ego, which was very dangerous. To where now it's not about me. Now it's not about what's right, but it's about me being right. Oh, that was dangerous. Don't be that way. Get rid of your ego. You can still try to find it. You can still believe you're right. You can still try to find what's best. But the moment that you have to just accept within yourself that the moment better logic and arguments are presented, okay, that's it. That's what wins. So when it comes to like that whole grass debate that we had, for people who are watching on YouTube, it was a debate about the grass in Cauldron Chronicles and how it should be different because it'll be better. But I argue that while it might be better if we did different things, it's also a waste of time and money and efficiency to spend time working on that for a prototype. And it's like, well, you know, technically both people are right. It would look better to have better grass, but also the grass we have is functional and it looks fine. It doesn't present really any visual artifacting or problems or bugs or crashes, whatever. So it's just like one of those things where it's less about the design and it's more about the situation. And the situation is that we don't have the time or money to change our grass at this point.
Similarly for Bloodlines, Vampire Bloodlines, I came on that so late that pretty much all the decisions were made. I just did code and mainly AI code. So
I've been there too.
Wasn't involved in that. Which brings me to Carbine and Wildstar, which I will admit I don't want to really talk about. I went to go look at my notes because I remember there were a ton of what I would call idea battles, things on crafting and things on combat and things on just so many things, targeting, just so much stuff. But let me say this about it. In my entire career, Carbine was the first time in the middle of one of these idea discussions, idea battles, that I was personally attacked. Where somebody came into my office and he basically said, "Hey, you know, I understand you have all these ideas, but I hear you're a really bad designer. I hear you suck at design."
I've been there too. I have 100% been there. I'll give you, I won't say what. I won't say where. But the person in charge of that project where I was also personally attacked during idea battles, that game did not release. The publisher did not like that game. And then the person who was in charge of that project was, bye-bye, don't be a company anymore. So I think in the end, I didn't lose. I don't know if I won, but I didn't lose.
But I hear you're a really bad designer. I hear you suck at design. And
toxic team.
I learned something about myself that day because I was really surprised at this was happening. And I was like, I had a reaction to it. But then I realized something. The moment someone goes for a personal attack in one of these meetings, it means they're all out of ideas. It means their idea isn't as good. They have no way of defending it. So they're just going to attack the other people.
I don't know if it's even always about ideas in this case. I think that is one of the reasons. But I think that Tim might also be missing that a lot of it can be done with hierarchy. So just because of how competitive it is, some people might attack you to degrade you, like calling you names. You know, they do it as a way to try and assert themselves higher on the hierarchy, but by resorting to personal attacks, they're actually lowering themselves on the hierarchy. It's an interesting conundrum. Hey, person, you lose the battle but won the war. I did kind of win the war in the end, but also then we went on to make a, I don't know. I'll leave that one. If you know, you know. If you don't know, it wouldn't be hard to figure out what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think that a lot of it can come down to people can feel personally attacked when their ideas lose, and they can resort to personal attacks simply as a way to defend themselves on the hierarchy and to lower you and make you think worse of yourself. What it really comes down to is that I think that person in that case might argue with the way, or might have a problem with the way Tim argues, but that person who said that is just very toxic. And that can, you know, we've talked about it before, that toxicity can just breed throughout a project and throughout a team. From any reason, you know, there could be struggles with the publisher, and then there can be little things that are said behind closed doors or in private messages or in whispers or while you're out hanging around or after you've had a few beers, and it can just kind of breed, and it's really hard to control that, but it's also something that I think management and HR need to stay on top of. And you really need to set an example for the kind of culture and team that you want. And in the case where you have very contentious or very difficult topics of design where people are resorting to physical, or not physical attacks, hopefully, but personal attacks, very different, then that needs to be intervened upon right then and there. And I don't know if maybe that's what happened. Maybe Tim will tell us.
this is what I see online when people say this game is stupid, the designer was stupid, this show, the writer was stupid. That's when I realize they're plumb out of ideas. There's nothing for them to objectively go after, so they just start insulting. At that point, they've already lost. They just don't know it. And to me, that becomes amusing. However, when I run meetings now, when that happens, I ask that person to go. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? If you're just going to be insulting, you can go. You can leave. Email me your ideas. Because while somebody can do that to me, I don't like them doing it to other people in a brainstorm.
Yeah, it just, like I said, it just propagates outward. And the moment that the moment like a tense idea battle happens, insult flung, boom, mood will instantly change in the room. And depending on how that is reacted to, that can set a precedence for that activity for the rest of the team, right? Slinging it back will just show that at the point where you feel as if your ideas are being attacked, you will resort to those personal attacks. And now people will be far less willing to talk to you about their ideas and to confront you where they think you're wrong. I've seen it happen. I've been there. I've been in the case where that's been what I've projected because I had problems in my personal life and I brought that into the workplace. I got heated in a heated debate. I might have been wrong. I think in most cases I was wrong in that case and I got angry. And then I started on like personal attacks or it became personal even if I didn't like directly insult. And now people will be less willing to talk to me as a designer and that's not what you want. Ooh, oh god, yeah, this is really it all just god, there's so many things that this interacts with. This is such a good topic, but I will say that one of the reasons that in Microraptor we talk about like transparency and being ethical as a company. We use those words to define our actions, and we talk about on our like company policy and website that sometimes you have bad days, but we're all adults. So sometimes you just have to say, okay, you know what? Things got heated today. Let's just start fresh tomorrow. Let's wipe the slate clean. And that's kind of the culture that we want to cultivate, where it's sometimes it gets a little bit too heated. I want to hire people that are passionate too. And if you get lots of passionate people in a room, you can end up in cases where it's just like 5 or 6 passionate people who all have different ideas of how to solve a problem, and that could go anywhere, right? Especially if everybody's had a bad day or things are a bit stressful. We're a week away from our release, and it's like, oh shit. So it's about that company culture, if you want to use that term, and a balance between how you cultivate that and how you manage your own emotions too, which is I don't think anybody's perfect at managing their own emotions at every point, and inevitably there might be those cases where, like Tim says, somebody might just throw out an insult, and it's like probably the best idea is to just say, yeah, get out of the room, email me your ideas, and then have a private conversation about that activity, uh, and make sure it doesn't happen again. Or if that is a frequent thing that occurs, either keep that person out of the idea room, or I would even argue just for letting that person go, right, and finding somebody to replace them who doesn't have that sort of behavior.
Session. And I literally think that's a hard and fast rule. Once you insult someone, you're cut off, you're out.
Yeah.
And you have to have that because everybody else has to feel like they can talk about their ideas
Exactly.
without being personally attacked. Anyway, I mentioned that Carbine left me so shell shocked, so traumatized that I didn't get myself involved in discussions on most of the Obsidian games. I think I mentioned that when I was involved in Pillars with Josh Sawyer, Josh was the design director, and I told him, hey, if I have an idea and you don't like it, I won't bring it up again. And I broke that rule once. I just went to him one time and said, I really, really have an idea that I would like to revisit. And we did talk about it again. And he still didn't like it, so it didn't go in. So the whole idea of, idea battles, that didn't happen again until Outer Worlds. Because I'm a game.
I mean, God, I can tell that he's shell shocked because I think that sometimes it's worth revisiting, especially if there's different context or you have different arguments. I don't think there's any requirement that I would ever expect somebody to have where they see something that's bad in my game and I expect them to have a perfect solution ready to pull from their brain in that moment. It's so rare that that's the case. Sometimes you just are like, I don't like that. I just don't like the way it looks, but I don't know why. And so I'll just say, you know what, okay, you know what, sit on it, think about it. We can circle back to this when you think of some reasons, or have, you know, an argument you want to present. And sometimes it's like, okay, you know what, you have that argument. I still think you're wrong, but you know what, if you come up with something else, if you think of something else, or another reason, or another way that we can fix it and provide a better, you know, user experience or something, then yeah, let's have that discussion again. However, you can't also be, you know, I can't waste my time having repeat discussions over and over and over and over and over again. But that's something where it's just kind of one of those interpersonal, intuitive kind of feelings, right? Where it's like, I think I've talked to this person enough about this. I'm not going to bring it up again. I still think they're wrong, but I'm out. I'm out of ideas. So we'll see what happens.
Game director now, and I'm co-directing with Leonard Borarsky, and that's how we work. So we did that a lot. It was Leonard and I in our office, and I talked about it, and it wasn't us arguing. It was just us talking and on the whiteboard and going over things. And, you know, to the people at Obsidian, a lot of them thought we were arguing. And if you actually would listen to what we were talking about, we were trying to figure out if an idea would work.
Yes.
Somebody said, well, why don't we do this? And we're like, well, it'll break this, and we'll have to rewrite this. And do we have enough time to do that? These are things you're going to have to figure out. And if it's your idea, I'm going to make you work on figuring it out. You can't have an idea and expect me to fix it all. If I really like your idea better than the current one,
Tim.
I will certainly help you fix it. But if you're trying to convince me to like your idea, you better not have a major problem with it. Or if you do, you better have an idea of how to fix it.
Yes.
There were a lot of discussions that I stepped away from in Outer Worlds. Anything about art, people talking about the art style, the color palette. I can't talk about that.
I mean, I think that you guys could all agree that that's pretty much me too. It's like, look, the color of something is wrong. I don't really know. I'm not here to work on the color. I'm here to make it work as a system. That's what I do. And if somebody says, "Oh, I know how you can make the mesh better," it's like, okay, well, I'm going to defer to you because I know absolute shit about this art thing. So if you say that doing this will make it look better, I will trust you, and just do the thing. And I did that too. For every game that I've worked on, thankfully, you know, the one that I worked on pretty heavily as like a design director, essentially, or the, you know, the creative director for the game, or lead designer, whatever you want to call it. That company didn't know what to call it either. We had a really competent art director, so pretty much he would sometimes run some things by me, but because it was meant to be a realistic style game, there weren't a whole lot of stylization choices here, and I just let him, you know, run the show from the art standpoint. And thank God, because I would not have had time to constantly have meetings about the art direction. He would just say, "Here's a model, you know, direction for our, I don't know, trains or whatever, because it was for the train game," and be like, "Looks good. I trust you. Do what you need to do. We want to have rain. We want to have snow. However you decide to solve that, I will be happy with it. As long as we have the rain and we have the snow."
That's why I had a co-director who was an artist.
Smart.
Same
Very
thing with
smart.
narrative. You know, he handled a lot of narrative stuff. Although there was one thing at some point in the Outer Worlds development, when we got all the companion submissions, all of the companions except for the robot and the priest were LGBT, which led me to go, no, we're not going to do that. The same way I didn't want all the companions to be sarcastic, and I don't want all of them to have amnesia, I don't want all of them to be queer. That's just not the vibe of this game. So I made.
Interesting that he's mentioning that with Avowed on the horizon. Interesting thing about Obsidian. They wanted. Wait, hold on. I gotta hear that again. I'm not mistaken, right? Outer Worlds was Obsidian. No, that was Obsidian.
All of the companions except for the robot and the priest were LGBT.
Man, that really explains a lot of things about Obsidian. If he had to push back, which by the way, Tim is, Tim himself is gay, so And I think he made the right decision, not just because of personal ideology, but because if you're releasing what's supposed to be a very wide appeal RPG, making all of those characters queer just kind of, yeah, it's just it doesn't really align with the audience, and as he said, I don't think it aligned with what the game was trying to be either. I mean, you can make a game where all the characters are queer, don't get me wrong, but for something that has that wide appeal, you need to consider, okay, most of the people playing this game are not going to be themselves queer. They're probably not, and it's not that they can't play with those characters, but they're going to be looking for relationships and for people that um, they can identify with. And it's just kind of off if all the characters are one way, but most of your market is the other way. Um, that alone can just, you know, lead to people being like, well, I like this companion for some reasons, but I don't really identify with them. I don't really have a lot in common with them because they spend half the time talking about their girlfriend or something, and it's two girls, so it's like I'm not a lesbian. I don't really have anything in common with this from a relationship standpoint, whatever. So it's not really, this isn't not anything about ideology, but this is very weird that they wanted to make all but two companions queer. That's really weird, especially like a robot, because it's like, well, you can't really have a relationship with the robot, and the priest kind of weird too, so but it does kind of point to some things that I guess can make sense when it comes to Avowed. Interesting.
Which led me to go, no, we're not going to do that. The same way I didn't want all the companions to be sarcastic.
Yeah, and you also, by the way, you also wouldn't want all the companions to be straight either. You could either go like the Baldur's Gate route where it's just main character sexual, right? It doesn't matter what you are. You can get with any companion. And I think that works. Although I tend to lean towards more like old school RPGs where every companion has their preferences, and you might play the game and not align with a companion's sexuality, and that's okay. If you want to replay the game with another character who's of that sexuality that they would like, go for it. If you're just not meant to be compatible with this character, I think that's fine too. I also kind of miss the idea of companions that can just turn you down from a relationship altogether. It seems nowadays that when you make an RPG, you need to make every single companion meet every single person's sexual expectations, and you can't just have an asexual individual or an individual who, think of like Samara in Mass Effect, who she's just old. She just has no desire for relationships anymore. She is kind of a lone wolf in that way, and she finds it easier to live her life and move around without having those relationship ties. I miss that because I think that it added complexity, and it provided another realm that individual players might conflict with, right? You might thirst over her and be like, well, I wanted to bang her. I wanted to bang Blue Mommy, but I can't bang Blue Mommy because Blue Mommy doesn't want to bang me. BG3 is the player's free to choose whatever he wants, but most of the games targeting modern audiences is about imposing on the player what the dev want. There's some of that. It's just weird to me that how many companions did Outer Worlds have? And let's do relationships, because I want to see how many people you could actually have a relationship with. Did you romance any of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the only ones that they didn't want to make. Max, oh yeah, Max and Sam. That's kind of crazy. I remember Pravarti still ended up being a lesbian, if I remember correctly. I actually liked her a lot. She was cool. Wanted to beg Morden, but he's not interested either, right? So yeah, I mean that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I'm glad that Tim pushed against that because that would have changed the feeling of the game quite a bit.
I don't want all of them to have amnesia. I don't want all of them to be queer. Mm-hmm. That's just not the vibe of this game. So I made them pick one, and it was Pravarti, and then everybody else got.
I like Pravarti. Pravarti was cool.
Made straight.
Made straight.
We also had idea battles on things like encumbrance. Somebody thought we should just get rid of it.
I was actually sad that Pavarti in Outer Worlds was not straight because I liked her. I thought she was the best, but then I was like, okay, it's not like I can change reality here, so I'll help you get with your lady friend, and it was cute. It was nice.
And I pointed out all the issues that would cause, which was not only encumbrance was tied to one of your attributes, and I think there were perks for it, and it would cause problems with the inventory, because if you could pick up anything you wanted and there was no limit to what you could pick up, how are we going to handle that in the inventory UI? Which, of course, no one ever has a good answer for. It's like, we'll just have an infinite inventory UI. Great, you've just shifted the complaints about encumbrance into complaints about the UI.
Yeah, into the UI responsiveness, because now the player can pick up a million items, and in order to load and to save that, now save games are bloated. Yeah, I mean, he has two really great videos. By the way, we've reacted to both of them about encumbrance. I highly recommend watching those, because they're just, it's such an interesting conversation of something that seems so simple to solve on the surface. Sorry for the number of S's that I just said in a row, but it is very difficult to solve below the surface once you start to ask how many other things will this have an impact on. And it can go, it's balance, it's UI, it's visuals, everything from that, the pacing of the game, the economy, all of that can be affected by the by encumbrance and how you modify it, or if you remove it or something.
An infinite UI isn't going to work. Now, yes, in Pillars we had the overflow stash, and there were rules on how you could touch it, but that doesn't solve, hey, what do we do with all these other perks and attribute tie into encumbrance? Similarly, I had a long discussion with someone who wanted to get rid of all the ammo in the game and make all the ranged weapons ammo-less. To which my response was, ranged weapons already have so many advantages over melee weapons, and you want to make them more on par with melee. But the thing I remember most about that discussion, about that idea battle, I mean, yes, I won it, but the thing I liked about it was that particular designer had so many ideas that were different than mine. I remembered that ending with, we're not going to do this, but one day I want to play a game that you're the lead designer on, because his ideas were so orthogonal to mine. They weren't opposite necessarily. They were just, he thought about games differently. So I said, that's not what I'm thinking about for this game, and because I'm director, I win. But I want to play a game you are a lead designer on,
Yes.
or even a director, because I would like to see what that game is like. It would be very not like a Tim Cain game, but I'm curious what his POV, what his style of game would turn into. And also, I'd be curious if it worked. If it shipped, if people really loved it, it would make me go, I'm going to rethink some of my design tenets, because this game is really, really good. But I was not convinced in that idea battle that A, his idea was any better, and B, he had fixes for all the problems his ideas would introduce.
I think that some of those like meta systems like ammo management and inventory management seem, sometimes you ask yourself, if the point is to inconvenience the player, why introduce them, right? Because there's no denying that removing ammo is a massive convenience win for the player. But that's where I think that you would see, again, you're either making a completely different game, and that's fine, when you make that different game, or you're working with like a designer who doesn't understand the importance of friction and why you need to introduce some friction in order for the player to make strategic choices. So if they know that they only have 4 launches of their rocket launcher as opposed to infinite, then they're going to save their uses of the rocket launcher for specific scenarios, right? And that could provide some fun and some strategy in the way that you approach scenarios. So it's like, okay, well, I have to fight these people before the boss, but I don't want to waste my ammo here, my heavy ammo, when I know that I'm probably not going to get enough to handle the boss. So let's try to do this encounter with my regular ammo, which will make it a bit more difficult, but that means that the boss will become easier. Or you might be able to balance it and say, okay, I'll use like 2 of these rockets to handle the bigger groups, and then I can save a couple for the boss room. So, it's like that friction provides a way for the player to change the way that they approach and the way that they ration, as opposed to just, okay, I have infinite ammo, I'm just going to use the weapon that does the most amount of damage at all times. again, you can make a game that's like that, that's fun, 100%. I mean, Doom is kind of like that, right? Where it's not particularly difficult to get super shotgun or to get shotgun ammo and to just have infinite, essentially infinite super shotgun. Um, but that's because the game is just meant to be about you finding the best way to destroy things. And I think that Doom Eternal changed that up a bit and turned it into more of like a kind of a Quake style game, if you ask me, as opposed to the Doom, where Doom 2016 was all about you will mostly have no problem finding ammo for any of the weapons you use, and you have the chainsaw that you can get ammo back really easily. Go ham, go crazy. And Doom Eternal was more about how do I solve this specific situation. Every enemy is like a puzzle. Two very different games I felt that were both good, fun games, but one felt very different from the usual Doom experience to me. I don't know why I'm talking about Doom. Please finish, Tim. Sorry.
Anyway, Triplicata, I hope this answers your question. I've done idea battles for decades. Never called them my idea battles, but I think I'm going to adopt that phrase.
Yeah, me too.
So thank you for the question.
That was great. Another great video by Tim. A great one to think about. If you guys want the link to this, I will share it in chat. Go give Tim a wonderful subscription and consider giving him joining him too and giving him money for it. Deflector, thank you so much for the follow. Hope you enjoyed the video. Just got here. Can you react to it again? You're gonna have to watch it on YouTube, I'm afraid, Ice Creek. And for people on YouTube, thank you for watching that one. I will catch you on the next one. Hope you enjoyed that. Go give Tim some love, and I will see you later. So bye-bye, YouTube.